is Behind the Mic. Local and worldwide interviews with athletes, entertainers, and you. A talk show that will engage, inform, and take you to the edge, maybe even over. Now, from the Big Z studios in suburban Chicago, here's the host of Behind the Mic, Gary Zahara.
My guest tonight is a hometown guy from Harvey, Illinois, whose decision sophomore year made him a two-time IHSA state champion in speech and a state champion in comedy, paving a way to a college scholarship in his first major motion picture role in 2008. A down-to-earth and humble guy, LaRoyce Hawkins joins me behind the mic next.
Brought to you by Team Keys and your financial services division manager, Whitley Brooks Edmunson, and Slugmaster, turning batters into hitters. Log on to slugmaster.com for a dealer near you.
He's one of the original cast members playing Officer Kevin Atwater, call sign 5021 David, on the now 12-year running police drama Chicago PD. Please welcome actor, stand-up comedian, spoken word artist, and musician, Royce the Voice, behind the mic, LaRoyce Hawkins. LaRoyce, how are you, my friend?
Come on, man. You know I can't complain, Gary. I appreciate the powerful introduction, man.
Oh, man, good. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking Patty's word and taking his advice that he had a good time. It was great interviewing him last week. It was funny as hell. So he's a great guy, and he spoke real highly of you as well.
Man, that means a lot, you know, and I consider Patty's recommendations to be respectful and honorable every time. You know what I mean? So that is how we get down.
How was your Labor Day weekend, and you got some time off? How's it been so far?
Oh man, Labor Day was interesting. I remember I was in Houston. I went to Houston for the weekend and headlined a poetry set down there at the Poetry Lounge with a good friend of mine named Seven. So Labor Day was great. It was my first time being on the road like that in a while. And then ever since then, it's been, you know, a light schedule for me personally, outside of, you know, just outside of personal stuff and family things.
Did you fly down to Houston or did you drive?
Man, I had to take that flight.
Not like Patty. Patty likes trying to. Did you watch his interview? He loves Amtrak, so he was plugging that all day on the interview when he takes the Amtrak up to Red Wing, Minnesota to see his family.
Yeah, you know, Amtrak is kind of like the Metro. That's the way to really fly half the time. But you know, and I enjoy the train too, and I like that train to Minnesota. You know, I get on that Amtrak. Sometimes it's a good way to go to St. Louis, Minnesota. You know, just these Midwest cities. That's not that far from Chicago. Sometimes that train is a little bit more enjoyable, and it's definitely cheaper. I used to take the same train from Chicago to Bloomington Normal. Sometimes I would catch it in Joliet, you know, back in my college days.
Mm-hmm.
That train was extremely helpful in getting me back and forth to Chicago.
Amtrak's a good train. We took it a couple times to go see the Hawks in St. Louis down, you know, take that train all the way from, we either picked it up in Summit, like you said, you do Joliet, but we took it at Summit and took it all the way down to St. Louis. So it was good. It was like a 4.5 hour train ride, but it was great. Nice and comfortable, get to sit and relax and chill. So
yeah, not that bad.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. All right. Mm-hmm. I mean, at the time of this taping tonight, we're 1 week away from the season premiere, 12th year already for Chicago PD. Time flies when you're having fun, especially as you're one of the original members of Chicago PD. Talk about that.
Yeah, I'm more grateful than anything, Gary. Come on, man, for somebody like myself from Harvey, Illinois. You know, extremely humble beginnings. You know, sometimes it's hard to find hope, and to be an exception to the rule in a favorable way is, you know, it's like hitting the lottery. You know, I think about my time, and it has gone by extremely fast, to your point, especially when you're having so much fun. And then when you really separate yourself from it, you realize, wow, I've been doing this for longer than I've been doing anything. You know what I mean? 12 years of a commitment at this high level. it's something that people dream about. You know what I mean? That walk into this industry, and I know it's a very rare opportunity. So, like I said at the top, I'm just grateful more than anything.
Do you remember your audition for Atwater? How did that come about? And talk about the audition process and when you came on board.
Man, my audition process was slightly unconventional because I don't remember auditioning for Atwater, if that makes sense. I'm not sure if I had an understanding of who Atwater was at the time. Sometimes the auditions can feel so general that you don't audition for the role that you land specifically, right? So um, my audition journey with the whole world started when I was in college. I was about 3 months away from walking from graduation day, and I was auditioning for Chicago Fire for the role of Otis. And believe it or not, Otis was a black role once upon a time.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So that was my first audition for the entire One Chicago universe. And I'll never forget being called back. Um, I think it was Valentine's. It was like around Valentine's Day. I remember because I had a Valentine's, in college around the time
Hmm.
she was extremely upset that I took it. I took the opportunity to actually like audition and do the callback as opposed to spending that Valentine's with her. Later on, she understood, but uh, that's what made the moment unique. So I go to the callback, and it's just me and this other gentleman. And to my surprise, it was a gentleman who I strongly admired. His name is Christian. His last name escapes me because I remember cutting him off in the middle of his introduction because I was starstruck for one of the first times ever. This was the brother who played Paul Williams in the Temptations movie.
Oh God. You're gonna make me look that up. Maybe I'll have my producer look that up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. His name is Christian. I can't think of his last name, but it was on, like I said, I cut him off. I got starstruck. I'm like, nah, bro, you are Paul Williams to me. You know what I mean? Because I didn't know the real Temptations. I grew up off the movie. So for me and him to be in the same audition opportunity at the same time was that was big and it said a lot. So after I let go of the fact that I was auditioning alongside one of my idols, I went to the bathroom. I said a prayer, did some push-ups, which would eventually become tradition for me, and I did my best. And believe it or not, I won the role. The only stipulation was that NBC, there was a good chance that NBC was going to change the color of the character, and ultimately they did. And I think by the time Chicago PD came around, I remember auditioning for um, what felt like it felt like the scenes or the energy from the sides must have been hosted. You know what I'm saying? Like I think the general sides that they were throwing out there for people to audition for felt like hosted scenes. Um, and that's where we meet Scott Eastwood eventually. That's where you meet Tanya Raymond eventually. That's where uh, JB Smooth will be a part of that cast. Michael T. Williamson. Like I never forget that original cast from the backdoor pilot for Chicago Fire. And everybody, with the exception of Jason Brigade, John Seda, and myself, ended up being replaced into what we understood to be the original cast for Chicago PD as it became the spinoff of Chicago Fire.
You obviously made quite an impression. You got the role. So when you had the role, was the plan to have Atwater make sporadic appearances during the show, or did the writers realize your growth potential?
To be honest with you, it's hard to say. Originally, I think what they were able to identify was a sense of authenticity. Seeing as though I'm from Harvey, Illinois, which is in, with backyards compared to Chicago. Um, and the biggest, I guess the biggest lob that was thrown at me was from our technical advisor, who's now also a producer. His name is Brian Luch.
Nooch. Yeah.
Yeah. Luch, as a cop at the time, thoroughly understood what it meant to be from Harvey. And once he learned about where I was from, he reminds me sometimes of a conversation that he had with the creators back then about how, I was as real as they get, when it comes to, hometown or local legacies. So I'm grateful for that conversation he had with them, because they made Atwater from Harvey. And so making Atwater from Harvey was probably the biggest gift that they could have offered me, because um, immediately I had an understanding of the references. Immediately I had an understanding how to wrap my imagination around this character over time. And, in 12 seasons deep at this point, Grace has allowed me, enough time to really lean into who this person is, in a way that the people from my neighborhood and people around my neighborhood can feel familiar, and they can see something just as authentic.
And being from Chicagoland, it does offer some authenticity for the role because you're from
Mhm.
Chicago. So the show is Chicago PD. It's good to have a guy who's literally from Chicago on that show to to the flavor of the show. So
Mhm.
let's talk about your childhood, Harvey to be exact. You talk about growing up in Harvey,
Mhm.
Thornton, go Wildcats. Talk about your childhood and how your grandparents shaped your life.
Man, it was I had a unique upbringing uh compared to most kids that grew up in Harvey. I'm grateful for the village that I had. Obviously it started with Grandpa John and my grandma, my mom and my dad. Um, they were obviously instrumental, but when I say the village that was set up for me, it was extremely supportive. Like whatever I was interested in or whatever it seemed like my young mind was into, Grandpa John did his best to make sure that I had the resources I needed to truly explore um, those options, right? So once upon a time, I thought I was into animation and kind of wanted to draw cartoons. And he gave me every book there was on how to draw animation. Once upon a time, it looked like I was interested in sports medicine, and because of my grandfather's resources, I was like all of my tutors were like actual doctors that were practicing medicine. So um, within that time period, I was undefeated in science fairs, because I had more resources than the average little homie. Um, my parents supported my imagination in wild ways. I remember wanting companionship from a pet, that pet like camaraderie that I would watch on some of my favorite shows. Like everybody had a pet, and I wanted something like that. And one day, it was one Easter Sunday, my dad shows up with a duck in a box. Said that this duck would be my pet, and asked me what his name was immediately, because I had a thing for alliteration. I named the duck Duke, and Duke was like my dog for about 2 years. You know what I'm saying? Which, when I got other friends who got pit bulls or Rottweilers, and I walking my duck up and down the sidewalk, it wasn't the conventional upbringing, so to speak. But I'm grateful for the seeds that were planted within all of these textures, because it allowed it allowed my imagination to grow into exactly what it needs today. You know, and, and yeah, it was it was fun as hell. It was fun as hell in Harvey the way I did it. I'm grateful for it.
It sounds like a total team effort to keep you from making that wrong turn and maybe having a bad path in your life. So, shout
Hmm.
out to Grandpa
Hmm.
John. So,
Hmm.
so my question, you, I mean, you and I talked before. I told you that, I knew Milt McGriven, who was a Thornton coach, and he said he knew you. We talked a couple episodes. You and I, me, you, and Patty worked a couple episodes. I don't know if you remember that, but it's interesting when I was reading your bio. So you thought you were better at comedy than you were at basketball?
Well, at the time I wasn't. At the time, I definitely had more hours in the basketball than I had at comedy. But it's about what felt better, you know. Speech and basketball ran around the same season, and I was on both teams, respectfully. Um, and it got to a point where my coaches, they got tired of fighting for my attention and for my energy, and they knew that I had potential in either one, but I wasn't really giving 100% effort to either one because I was juggling both. So around the end of my sophomore year, they gave me an ultimatum. They said I had to pick one. And Grandpa John helped me make the decision to go the speech route because he asked me what helped, what made me feel better. So it wasn't about what I was better at. It was about what made me feel better at the time, making people laugh or watching that ball go through the net. And at the time, as I was honest with myself, it felt better. It felt better to make people laugh.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I listened to, and that's what I followed. And so it was a unique moment when Grandpa John told me that, you know, because we just didn't use certain language, right? So he was like, "You're not going to quit the game because you can always come back to the game whenever you want to. But we're going to go to basketball practice and tell Coach T that you're going to leave the game for now to become a champion somewhere else." And I walk up to the practice, give the lines to Coach the way Grandpa John told me. And Coach didn't understand at the time. He didn't understand much about theater at all. And I could tell by how he told me to line up the team and show them the lesbian stuff that I was leaving the basketball team for. And by lesbian, I'm sure he meant thespian, but
Right.
you know, he didn't really have a knowledge of the terminology. So to make a long story longer, I do that. I do exactly that. Set everybody down in the bleachers, and my coach made me do my speech routine where, you know, I was popping in and out of characters. I was doing voices. I was singing a little bit. You know, I was exercising textures that the team hadn't seen their power forward perform. And by the end of the groove, everybody, like the reaction was so supportive. You know, that I had them rolling and dying out their seats, and the support and the energy that they gave me to actually go pursue that. I think is what makes me a fearless performer. You know, from there, I've always been comfortable being Johnny on the spot. You know, whenever it's time to activate, or whenever I get a crowd, or I find a moment to create a stage, I have a hard time saying no. And I think it starts with that moment. So I thank Coach T and I thank Grandpa John for planting that seed. And what was interesting was, uh, if I can share moments a little further with you, eventually I would get an honorable opportunity to be inducted into Thornton's Hall of Fame. And I got to be one of the youngest people in Thornton's Hall of Fame, because by the time they actually started inducting people into their like senior citizens, like I never forget, I think my son might have been 2 at the time, and I brought him to the ceremony with me. Yeah, so the people that were being inducted had to be at least 105 years old, right? Everybody else they were extremely seasoned.
Man,
And
Royce, you're doing them dirty like that, man. I can't believe
yeah,
that. Oh
no,
boy.
man, I said that to say, you know, as perhaps one of the youngest people to be inducted in the Thornton Hall of Fame, it was an honor. To have my son on me was an honor, and I think Coach M, who we know mutually, you wouldn't believe who he had on the phone at the end of the ceremony.
Who
Coach
was
T.
it?
Coach T was on the phone, the same coach that told me to get the whole team by the bleachers and perform the lesbian stuff that that was taking me away from the game. And he hopped on the phone and he said, "Looks like that lesbian stuff is doing pretty good, huh?" And I was like, "Come on, Coach T, it's good to talk to you." It was a very, very surreal experience and powerful full circle moment. Something that I'll never forget.
Yeah,
But I appreciate Coach T. I appreciate my grandfather. In that moment, especially, I would consider that to be probably one of the most powerful turning points in my young life, especially because ever since that moment, I haven't looked back.
and talk about you and I have someone in common. And you talk about Coach M, Coach Milt McGriven. You
Mm.
still are you in touch with him? Do you talk to him at all, or?
No, I mean we don't. I mean, obviously, every time we see each other is love. We don't talk on the phone that often, but every time I'm back around my old stomping grounds, and it's always a pleasure to see him, and it's always love.
That's good. That's good. So your partner on screen, PJ Fluger, one of your best friends off screen as well, because I had him on, so we interviewed him before. He
Mhm.
got his break before graduating high school, a little bit right before you did, almost the same way. But you got your scholarship to ISU, go Redbirds, and then you got your big break playing Art Baker in the Express, the Ernie Davis story. Talk about how that came about.
Man, that was amazing. You know, I was at Illinois State for about a semester by the time the Express pulled through for me, and the whole experience to go back home and start filming a major motion picture, it felt like I can only imagine how Derrick Rose felt getting drafted to the NBA and coming back home to play for the Bulls. You know,
Mhm.
it was a very it felt like my homecoming, but it also felt like my big break at the same time. You know, I was grounded by friends and family still. I was still so connected to my high school because I literally just graduated, you know. And so what I was able to do was really like, you know, I was able to come back home and inspire, you know, young minds that was still at Thornton High School, you know, and like I was just here a semester ago, you know, in this same chemistry class with Mr. Starks. And now I'm shooting one of the biggest opportunities of my life because um, you know, because I really like I held on to a dream that I expected to really take me further outside of my backyard. But every opportunity that I've ever had, um, big and small, has happened right here at home. The audition process was interesting because it was imagine it was an email that went to the theater department at Illinois State, and they were looking for a black actor that could play a black athlete. And I was honestly the only black person in the theater program that could pull it off at the time. And I didn't know that it was going to be a major motion picture until I actually got there to the audition, and I see all my favorite movies on the walls. You know what I'm saying? Like The Breakup, Mr. 3000. You know what I'm saying? Like all these films that I grew up watching, I was like, wow, they casted these moments, and now here I am. And I went in for Ernie Davis naturally, and obviously didn't land that, but I kept on getting called back to audition. It was TPR casting, now it's called PR casting. Um, but they really gave me my first shot. They really like after my first audition, they gave me the whole script and told me to come back the next day. You know, it was like they really felt like I had a chance to be Ernie Davis. Um, and sometimes that's what happens. You know, you can have a Chicago favorite, you can have an LA favorite, you can have a New York favorite for one role,
Mhm.
and you know it's up to the powers that be to choose who actually lands it. But I was the Chicago favorite for Ernie Davis. And obviously that's not what happened. And I would come back and I started auditioning for other roles. And that was early in my career. So I thought that meant they didn't like me, to be honest with you. I thought that meant that I could be better. And what ends up happening is, and it was like months, auditioning over months of time. And I I got a call from PR casting and they were interested in hiring me to be a reader for the film. And they were going to pay me like $250 to just pull up and just read a few characters. But I would also meet the director. I would also meet some of the actors that I would cast. And I never forget that day because it was storming. It was like when I walked into the production office, I was soaking wet. And I took the train. Took the train this time. Usually my dad would come pick me up and take me on some of these big opportunities. Like literally drive from Harvey to Bloomington Normal, pick me up, take me to Chicago. I would audition and then he'll drive me back to school. You know what I mean? Like sometimes that was the system. But once I got good on that Amtrak, it wasn't no turning back. You know what I mean? But that storm was crazy. And I remember walking in there soaking wet, so wet that thank God the production office had like a washer and dryer. Like they had to take my clothes and dry them off.
That's how wet you were? You had to use their washing machine and drying machine? Wow.
Yeah. It was crazy. It was crazy because, this was before Uber. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Right.
I'm walking everywhere. Like I'm from the train, I'm on foot patrol, doing my best with the directions I got. You know what I mean? And so imagine getting lost a little bit. So I'm more wet than I should be. And then I remember sitting down and I'm waiting on everything to start. And in my mind, and this is like a rule of thumb, my pops taught me, where I come from, it's like when you go into big opportunities and you know what's going, his advice was just be nice to all the white people and tell them your daddy said hi. Be nice to all the white people and tell them your daddy said hi. And so that's, and to this day, I still tell a random white director or authority, you know what I'm saying, on the film set that my dad told me to tell you hi. And they were like, do I know your father from somewhere? And I'm like, no, I don't think so, but you want me to let you know? Hi. And
it's not so much a black and white thing; it's a respect thing. So,
yeah,
but that's
it's
funny. Yeah, that's
a
funny though. I
respect
like
thing. But
it.
my pops was real. He old school, and so his generation would communicate. Um, you know, be nice to the white people, every white person you see, and tell them your dad said hi. And so, to be honest with you, that ends up being a good luck charm for me moving forward.
Now, are you saying that Dad wants you to be nicer to the white people than the black people? Is that what you're saying?
No, I ain't saying that. I'm just saying, he wants to create, if he can, he wants to create, there's good energy,
I got you.
and synergy. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it always ends up working out. Every time I remember to do it, it's always a good thing. But in this particular moment, I'm trying to clock the director, who I know his name is Gary Fleeter. I don't know exactly what he looks like, but I know Gary Fleeter is the white man directing this particular movie. And so we finally bump into each other in the lobby. I stand up and introduce myself, and he recognizes me from the audition tapes. And he was like, "You're LaRoyce Hawkins, right?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir." Are you Gary Fleeter? And he was like, "Yes, I am." And he had he talked real fast. He had a very, very quick pace. And he cursed a lot. But in that moment, I never forget, before the table read started, he asked if I was open to playing Art Baker. And I remember when I read the script, I remember seeing Art Baker, as a name, but it wasn't that big of a role. And I heard through the grapevine that role was going to go to a football player because, it wasn't really that big. They were just going to hire an actual football player to play this role. And believe it or not, Gary, I got zero football experience. My grandma would not let me play football in high school. She
Mm-hmm.
was like, not, you know, she wasn't having that because Coach T, who was my basketball coach, was also the football coach. And he wanted me to play football. And yeah, she wasn't interested in me doing that. So I had zero football experience, but at the time I was developing into an actor. And from the tapes, he was interested in my energy, and he asked me if I could be Art Baker. And I said, yes, sir. I would love to be Art Baker. And he said, well, football camp starts Monday.
Sweet. That's
And
not, it's not a bad cast to get your feet wet for your first gig in Hollywood. You look at Charles Dutton, Dennis Quaid, Clancy Brown, Saul Rubinek, Omar Benson Miller, another Chicago area guy that I remember from Major League, Chelsea Ross, and at
yeah,
the time, before he became famous as Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman. Talk about working with everybody on that cast.
come on, man. It didn't take me long after his death, God rest his soul, that I remembered Chadwick Boseman was Floyd Little. I auditioned for Floyd Little as you know in my process to become an Art Baker. That was one of the auditions that I didn't get. Naturally, I understand why, because Chadwick Boseman ends up being Floyd Little, and I think that might have been his first movie. That was one of his first movies.
I believe so. Yeah, as I was looking stuff up, I believe so. It was one of his first movies, and then
It was
obviously the
definitely
rest
my
is
first.
history. Yeah.
Um, Another first on that in that cast was uh, uh, Nicole Bahari, who I still got a crush on. But we saw Nicole Bahari, who doing great work on the morning show. But she was Ernie Davis's girlfriend in that film. It ends up being Chadwick Boseman girlfriend in the Jackie Robinson movie. So Nicole Bahari has made an amazing career for herself. Anjanou Ellis, I never forget Anjanou Ellis, who was Mary Ann and Ray. And Ray is one of my favorite movies. Ray is in my Mount Rushmore of movies, Gary. It's Forrest Gump, Ray, Space Jam, Mo Better Blues.
Space Jam. Okay. All
Oh
right.
yeah, Space
All
Jam. Come
right.
on now.
Okay.
Come
Yeah,
on now.
I know. Michael Jordan. Okay, I got you. So
Come on now.
you do a stint on 187. How does I know you talked about the audition for Chicago
Mhm.
PD, but how does it come onto your radar?
Uh, which one? 187
No,
or
no. After you did the stint on 187, 187, how does Chicago PD come on your radar?
um? It came on my radar because of, to be honest with you, I was understudying at the Goodman Theater at the time. Um, I just finished doing my first professional play, directed by Nelson Ellis, who was also in the Express. I forgot to mention his name, from Harvey. God rest his soul. Um, Probably one of the most prolific characters we've seen on Showtime and True Bloods. Um, and so since I had just done my first professional play and it had a lot of success, I started getting looks at Steppenwolf and Goodman, and so I'm understudying at the Goodman at the time, and the audition pulled up. I'm almost positive I auditioned for the same role that Scott Eastwood landed at the time, and I think because of my former audition in Chicago Fire as the role of Otis,
Right.
um, they remember me. Thank God for PR casting, because they helped me get agents after I landed the Express, basically with no representation. They recommended me to the best agents in Chicago, Stuart Talent, um, and me and Stuart Talent had a very, very great relationship. Um, and they were the people who they were the people who helped me land Chicago PD, who helped me work out that deal. And what was interesting about that was Ballers, the TV show Ballers from HBO, um, almost played soft interference, because Ballers gave me my first offer. Ballers gave me my first offer. I was they wanted me to be Ricky. But they also knew that I was very eager. I was very eager to work at home. I'd already done the backdoor pilot of Chicago PD on Chicago Fire. I had already fallen in love with the character and with the possibilities and with the potential that the character had. I come from Harvey, where we don't trust the police that much and we don't have great relationships with officers. And so it was important for me, once I understood the assignment of the role, it was important for me to play a character that not only could, that could bridge a gap between the Black community and cop culture.
LaRoyce Hawkins joins me. He plays Kevin Atwater on Chicago PD. 12th season premiere, September 25th, Wednesday, 9 o'clock Chicago time on NBC. Perfect segue as you talk about that character. The growth of your character is pretty profound. You like Ruzek, PJ Fluger. You had some serious dark episodes. You got undercover drug stings, terrorist plots, racist cops. Do the writers approach you? Did they approach you in the beginning, or did you come with some of your ideas? And not to be stereotypical about it, but since you're the only Black officer, was it inevitable for the racist arcs for this show to be have them put you in them?
I think it probably was inevitable. That don't mean that it was on purpose, but it obviously was inevitable, and we couldn't avoid it. At the precipice of the racial the racial combustion that we found ourselves in during the pandemic. And I remember how surprising the pandemic was. What was interesting is it was season 7 at the time, when we had to cut the season short at 20 episodes. And we had just shot the 20th episode when everybody had to go home. And we didn't know what the pandemic meant or what was going to happen, nor could we predict that the racial injustices would erupt the way that they did. But the finale wasn't the episode. The finale should have been episode 20, based on the fact that that was the last episode that we shot. But the last and the best episode that we shot, and I say this humbly, was directed by Eric LaSalle, and that would have been episode 19, which is the big episode where you see me in the middle of the street telling all the cops as the cop cars are swirling around me on the block that I'm right here. And so that wasn't intended to be the finale, but it was the best thing we had at the cut of the season. So it became the finale, which was the perfect alley-oop for the racial injustice that made it the perfect alley-oop for season 8, episode 1 and 2, where you see Atwater still dealing with the blue wall and doing his best to maintain his composure, his compassion, and to not compromise the culture at the same time. So it just, when you say it, was it inevitable? Almost obviously, but we had no idea. We had no idea that it was gonna get that deep and get that dark.
Man, certainly you had a perfect response when you threatened the commander with letting it go and just giving up your job just to sink him and make sure everybody knows what kind of a piece of shit he was.
Yeah.
Does Atwater at times mirror LaRoyce in real life and vice versa?
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard. It's hard to separate the two.
Right.
To be honest with you.
Right.
Like I said, the greatest gift that the creators gave me was making my character from Harvey. So we're very, very similar when it comes to not just our references, but our imaginations. And I do my best. I'll do my best to throw as much of my imagination in them as possible. This is really my first big picnic. And so I know we 12 seasons deep, but I'm gonna throw everything I can into Atwater. off the strength of the fact that he's the first he's the first role that I really get the opportunity to, and I'm not sure when I'm going to get an opportunity to go this deep with the character again. You know, you couldn't have told me that I was going to be 12 seasons in at any point. You know, this is something extremely special, and so I just want to take advantage of it, of the time and of the grace that I've been given. And you know, if Atwater would have been from anywhere else, trust me, I will be representing whatever place that is just as hard and just as seriously, and I'll be doing my best um, to thoroughly immerse myself in whatever the roots of that space is. But I'm from Harvey, so you know, I do my best, and I'm grateful for that because now my hometown is able to get a little love, and we can share a little light in that direction. But the references that I have are so familiar, and my imagination is really pulling from, you know, deeply rooted references.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, we're very similar. We're different, obviously, and I learn more about them sometimes as the writing progresses. You know what I mean? But I also think that the writers learn from me as my intentions progress. And so, you know, it's this very delicate dance. It's very give and take, uh, but extremely collaborative. It always has been. So I'm happy for that.
Patty talked about the writers' room and how on point they are. This is a
Mm.
two-part question. Do you agree with that? And talk about Lucha's influence on you.
Mm. Um, I do think they're on point. You know, there was a moment, and this is, like I said, this is my own imagination, right? I try to find the parallels. I try to find the parallels of resistance between myself and Atwater, and I don't I don't want this to be perceived as dark or disrespectful, but if I had to identify a blue wall for myself in the same way that Atwater has one, I always played the writer's room as my blue wall.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Um, as the only black character on the show, sometimes um, there are disconnections because it's not many black writers in the writers room, and so those disconnections only give us opportunities to really connect and really learn and grow from each other. You know what I mean? I'm grateful for the writers room because of how it's taught me to not just focus, but to really, you know, it challenged me to like lean in. There was a time when I used to come to set all the time and I'd be like, man, I know I'm gonna have to change these lines because the character don't sound like me. But then, you know, I had to embrace the lines. You know what I'm saying? Over time, I've learned how to embrace the lines and make the lines sound like me
Right.
because it's more of an energy thing. You know what I'm saying? Um, it's not always going to be on the page, but you got to find it. That's what my job is. And so I'm just grateful for the grace that I've had over time to be able to, you know, think one way and be able to be convinced that I should have been thinking another way. You know what I mean? Um, you know, I got on the show when I was 25. You know what I'm saying? So being an extremely young actor, and with this being my first big picnic and powerful opportunity, um, it took a while for me to just be more than happy to be here. It took a while. It took a few seasons for the nostalgia to wear off and be like, okay, fuck it, I'm here now. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? You know, it's not about that. Now it's about really cooking. You know what I'm saying, and getting down to business. And so I say that to say that yeah, I think the relationship that I've had with the writers' room over time hasn't been perfect, but it's given me an amazing opportunity to learn and grow as like a grown man storyteller. You know what I'm saying? I've learned so much about writing and plot um, um, and intention and just story and how to serve the story first, and allow your imagination to really like lean in, and the way I communicate with the writers' room now is even different. You know what I'm saying? So I've definitely grown, and it's been a long ride. A
Talk
dope.
about Brian Lucci's influence, and he's obviously he's got that 25 years of being in the shit as a Chicago police officer.
Right.
Talk about when he sits down and talks to you and says, "Hey
Hmm.
man, we want to go do this. What do you think of this?" Is
Yeah.
he understanding? Is he's one of the leaders in the room there?
Yeah. So I said all I said to say that honestly, without Luch being a powerful liaison between the writers' room and the cast, you know, I definitely wouldn't be here. It was Luch who told them how authentic I was because I'm from Harvey, because only Luch would understand what it means to be from Harvey
Right.
as a Chicago cop. You know, me and Luch, as we've gotten to know each other over time, have learned that we got so many deep connections from people that we've met in our lives, um, and people who have influenced us as well on different sides of the block. So it's Luch's fault that I'm on this show. You know what I mean? Because Ballers was thinking about me, and I would have been interested if Luch hadn't shown me how how unique how unique the lifestyle of a cop could be. You know, my experience didn't give me that.
Right.
Coming from Harvey, I could have given less of a damn about a cop, let alone playing a cop on TV. To be honest with you, Luch makes it not only look cool, but he makes you care about it. He makes you care about it because he's such a great storyteller himself. And sometimes it's hard to say if it's his imagination that you're infatuated with, or if you're actually just um, more locked in with law enforcement than you thought. But either way, you find yourself learning something extremely special. And so Lucha's influence is invaluable. He's the heart and the soul of the show.
Well, and obviously,
Without Luch,
Chicago PD outlasted Baller, so I think you made the right choice. And Luch is good to push you there and say, hey man, you're going to do good things here in these episodes with this series. Probably maybe more with Ballers. I know Ballers may be a little more flashy show, but I mean, again, and I'm just not blowing smoke at you, but I don't see anybody else playing the character as well as Ruzek, Patty, you, and playing Atwater. It's just you guys fit that perfectly. So, um, you've had some serious conversations with when you started partnering up with Adam Ruzek, your partner PJ Fluger, in some episodes. What makes that Atwater Ruzek dynamic work so well?
man, I think it's the authenticity of the friendship off the screen. To be honest with you, me and Patty got very close right away. He was one of the first. He was the first person to really embrace me completely. Like, you know, I was hired as a local, which meant that I had to find myself to work from Harvard. At the time, I didn't even have a car, and my license was suspended.
Damn,
So imagine,
6303, Kev, what are you doing with that? How come your license was suspended? LaRoyce.
man,
I'm calling you
man,
Kevin, sorry.
it, I mean, it's what comes with living in the hood. You
Yep.
know, your license is going to be suspended sometimes for a little
Uh-huh.
bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just part of the textures. It's it's not even personal, and so it's you know. So imagine how grateful I was, and I didn't have to explain myself, but you know, everybody else is pretty much imports. You know, they come from LA, they come from New York, and they put them, you know, they're going to be put up in the fancy hotels at the Waldorf Astoria. And you know, these are your living quarters. And whole time I'm a part of this cast, but I got to go back to Lexington. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And Patty basically was like, "No, you can just stay with me. Well, why would you go back? You can just crash with me." You know what I'm saying? I got a couch, and and so like from that was when I knew that me and Patty were going to be close because it was kind of no questions asked, and we felt extremely comfortable with each other, and he just embraced me like that. That first year, I think the first 2 or 3 seasons, I went to Red Wing, Minnesota for Thanksgiving. Made my grandma aggravated because you know what I'm saying? Because all you know what I mean?
Uh-huh. How you miss Grandma's Thanksgiving, boy?
Yeah, and I'm in Red Wing with these white people who wanted to adopt me, and that like they like Patrick like you can talk to Patty about his family, and I felt the love and I felt adopted at the same time. It was like I almost had my mama fill out some papers because the Flugers, the Flugers really knew how to love and lock in, and I noticed how they loved each other as well, and it wasn't far off. It was very similar to how me and my family love each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think since we both from, you know, these Midwest small towns, you know what I'm saying, outside of the metropolises that our states are you know, recognized by, but you see us, you know what I'm saying, from the outskirts of these big cities, that just want to perform, you know what I'm saying, that just love storytelling. And I think our love for performance and storytelling clicked. And um and yeah, you know, that's when I tell you that's my dog, that's my dog. But the difficult conversations that you watch Atwater and Ruzick have are reflections of the difficult conversations that LaRoyce and Patty have had. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We've had real conversations about um our experiences um from where we come from. So when you see me call him over to the hood of the Hellcat, and I tell him, bro, you can't just tell a black man to get on his knees like that and expect for him to listen to you, especially when he didn't do nothing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like those are, you know, it was ironic that we had a similar conversation, and we weren't. It wasn't like I was reprimanding him or telling him not. You know what I'm saying? I was just sharing with him an experience that I had, and so there was a connection, and all of us as a cast, um, we're close like that. We've had conversations off screen that we find being direct reflections to conversations we have on screen sometimes, which is extremely unique. Like, you know, when Michaela became a thing and Burgess wanted to adopt her, the conversation that her and Kevin had is very similar to a conversation that me and Burgess had, just about like as a white mom that wants my child to be progressive, how do I do that? You know, or is it books? Is it um, you know, is it lifestyle? Like, you know what I mean? Like we've had these conversations, and I'm not an expert in bridging the gap necessarily, but authentically I can do my best, and I'm gonna always be honest. And so we had those conversations. I had conversations with Jason all the time about fatherhood, not just about fatherhood, but also like, you know, Jason knows how to give you notes that doesn't just apply to the screen, but applies off screen as well. You know, and when Atwater had to be on the front line for a lot of those um, racial textures, he helped me realize that you have to be scared a little bit first before you can be courageous. You can't just be courageous because it's not courage if you weren't scared. So don't be afraid to show that vulnerability
Right.
and be a little nervous. You know what I mean? You can't be over righteous and right all of the time. Give yourself room to be imperfect so that, you know, everybody can relate to that. You know, so yeah. And that sounds like a very similar conversation that you can hear Voight and Atwater having at the same time, you know.
Right. So, and your first partner before you and Ruzek hooked up, obviously, when you were a patrol officer, you were with Marina Burgess in the patrol car.
Mhm.
So, you guys kind of like a motley crew. Talk about working with Marina Swirscotty.
Man, it's the best, man. She comes to work, and I've never seen her unprepared. Never seen her unprepared. She's always in the pocket and ready to go. You know, she's very much like her character. You know, Burgess um, is, you know, something like she's a very calculated overachiever. You know, and an overthinker. You know what I'm saying? Always allows herself the extra thought just in case. Um, and I love that about Burgess because I think not only is it something that we can learn from, but it's something that adds texture because everybody's not like that. You know what I mean? Um, you know, Patty and Ruzick, they're a little bit more nonchalant sometimes with their gifts. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and Burgess is not. She takes her gift seriously. Marina takes her gift seriously, and is an example to all of us all of the time.
When I was talking with Patty last week, and when I had him on, we were talking about Hank Voight, Jason Begay, Hank Voight,
Mm-hmm.
the character, being the leader,
Mm-hmm.
and also that gruff voice. And I told Patty that he got that voice because he had got into a car accident. And I told him one of my favorite shows, my favorite all-time police show, no offense to you guys, is NYPD Blue. And he was on one of those episodes. He played a delivery man rapist. And he also was in G.I. Jane with Demi Moore. But if you go back and look at those episodes in that movie, his voice doesn't sound anything like it. And that voice, and tell me if you agree or not, I think because of that accident, that Hank Voight voice, that gruff, don't take any prisoners, I'm not dealing with your bullshit kind of CPD leader, fits that character perfectly. What does he bring to the table on and off the camera?
Man, so much. You know, what's interesting is I never forget.
Did he talk about his injury, about his voice at all, or did you know about that? Or because that's something that's, I don't know if maybe that's talked about or not.
Yeah, he doesn't talk about it a lot. But he's down to share. If we're on the topic, but it's not like it's not at the top of mind.
Right.
Um, you know, I think he's very much like his character, right? Where he shares he shares what's necessary. Um, and he trusts you with a little before he trusts you with a lot, you know.
Right.
And so it took a while for me to learn about the things that he's not necessarily private about, but he's also not extremely public about, from the accident to the Scientology, even. You know what I mean? Like all those things kind of unpack over time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'll never forget one of the first things he taught us, and it's something that I'll never forget, I'll never let go of, is that Chicago is the show. All of us are characters. We play characters that are here to serve Chicago. And if we're here to serve Chicago, that means that we're here to serve the show. So let it be about Chicago and not about us. If we make it more about Chicago, then the show will be successful. And if the show is successful, then we'll be successful. But we can't make it about us. Because if we make it about us, the show won't do shit. And I'm grateful for that advice that he gave us. I think most of us listened. And until this day, that's a rule of thumb that we do our best to make sure we follow. You know what I mean? I have to remind myself about that. Sometimes I remind him in conversation, like, remember when you said that? And he's like,
Yeah.
huh,
You're right, Kevin. Yeah.
I did. I did. I did. Um, but yeah. He also talks to us about, and I think that note evolved into be more interested and not interesting, which is something which is basically the same thing, but it's helped me not just on screen but in life. You know what I mean? To not pull up in a room and expect for all the fingers to be pointed your direction or to absorb all of the light, but to really reflect light, and your interest would spark something in the collective that
And
creates
it's more genuine too. So if you're going and
a
you're
genuine
interested, it
approach.
shows you're being a genuine person. So
It's a
yeah.
genuine approach.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the type of cat that he is. And I appreciate that about him. Very wise, very funny, very raspy. You know what I mean? That's how he gets down.
You better show him this interview. All right. So, you've been a dad for 7 years. This is probably a softball question. I'm assuming it's your proudest achievement. Is RJ going to follow in Dad's footsteps?
Man, it's hard to say. His village, is a little different from my village, when I was his age.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's quite the athlete right now. I didn't start playing sports until I had to come outside and play with my duck. And then I was forced to learn how to play basketball and ride bikes and stuff like that. If it wasn't for my duck, I'd still be in my grandma's house watching movies and playing video games. But he's quite the athlete already. It only took him a week to go from second string quarterback to first string to team captain on his flag football team.
Ooh.
You know what I mean?
Look out.
His last game, I think he had like 3 touchdowns, a couple of interceptions, took all the flags. But he's also very, very funny. His timing is crazy. Me and his mom laugh all the time, and we're always surprised about how smart he is, and just his timing. You know what I mean? He listens very well, and so he definitely has the textures it takes to be a young entertainer, and I firmly believe he has it in him. Like him and his homie Malachi did the school talent show. And Malachi did all the singing, Roman John did all the dancing. And the best part of the entire talent show from top to bottom was the moment when Roman John broke loose and started breakdancing in the middle of the song that his homie is singing, and like the whole room went crazy. And it was truly the climax of the event. So I know he knows how to steal a show. I know he loves the attention and the energy. I know he knows how to absorb the light. And he's even expressed interest to me and his mom about how he'll be interested in a YouTube channel. That's what the little kids want these days. It's like
We're gonna see Roman John with Dad at Chicago PD. Maybe one of these episodes, or am I stepping over the line a little bit?
No. We're gonna see. I bring him to work with me sometimes,
Yeah.
just to see if he catch it.
So it's comedy. He's following in Dad's footsteps there. Now football. Is he gonna be another Antoine Randall L?
He might, to be honest with you.
Is he gonna be Thor? Is he gonna be a Wildcat?
No, he's not gonna be a Wildcat if he still lives in Rockford with his mama.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. But
where's he gonna go? Boylan?
Might go to Boylan, might go to Auburn.
Okay.
I mean,
all right. If he does basketball, I might be doing his basketball games if I'm still around. So I mean, how old is he? 7 years old? 6, 7 years old?
Yeah, he's 7.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, you got a long time. So
I've been doing it for
you good
41
about
years, my man. It's
how many?
we share a couple of things in common besides being extremely handsome. We share a birthday, buddy, May 4th. Don't mess with the bull. So
Ooh, may the fourth be with you,
that's right,
Gary.
buddy. That's right. Yes, sir. A
Hey
couple
man,
more questions.
that's a
Hey, this
unique
has been a great
birthday, ain't it?
interview. This has been a great interview so far. I got a couple more questions. What'd you say? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Say that's a great birthday, ain't it? How you feel about it?
I feel good, man. It's like I said, a Taurus. My mom always said. I mean, I wasn't a bull in a china shop when I was younger, but I mean, I was a little bit rambunctious. Not the way
Yeah,
these kids are nowadays, because I think they need to be reined in a little bit, and that's a conversation for another day. That's
true,
probably one of those serious conversations probably you and I can have as well. So,
true.
couple more questions before we get to our final segment in a word. LaRoyce
Mhm.
Hawkins is joining me. He plays Kevin Atwater. Officer Kevin Atwater on Chicago PD, the 12-year running PD drama on NBC. The season premieres September 25th, NBC, 9 o'clock. All right, big dog. Best advice you've gotten in your personal life and your professional life?
Hmm. I probably have to give that to.
That Grandpa John again?
I want to give it to Grandpa John. Trust me, Grandpa John got some hits. Grandpa John definitely got some hits. But for the sake of professional and personal, I'm gonna give it to Tom Dreesen,
The comedian Tom Dreesen?
the comedian Tom Dreesen from Harvey, Illinois.
Oh, boy.
And Tom Dreesen, similar to my grandfather, has a street named after him. And I always told Grandpa John that one day I'm gonna have a street named after me, but I want mine to be as long, if not longer, than Tom Dreesen's. Because Dreesen Street runs forever, it feels like. Grandpa John Street only goes about 4 blocks from 155th to 159th.
All right.
But Tom, I was able to get a sit down with Tom Dreesen um pretty early. It was I don't remember exactly what season it was. It might have been like it was either 3 or 4, maybe 2, 3 or 4. I was able to get a sit down with Tom Dreesen because everybody knew how much I admired him. Um, and honestly, and to be honest with you, I met him a little bit after high school because he headlined a big fundraiser benefit for the township. And, I was a Ray Charles impersonator for a few years. And me and my band were able to open up for him, which is where we first met. But I don't think he expected to meet me again in the way that he met me. So now I'm the black guy on Chicago PD and also still doing comedy, a young comedian that's, still hosting live band sets and whatnot. And so I'm doing my best to figure it all out. And Tom Dreesen said something that was extremely profound. To this day, I still use it. And he taught me the difference between being spirit-led and ego-driven. And he said, any ego-driven asshole can find himself successful.
Yeah.
But it takes a spirit-led individual to not just be successful, but significant. And significance is what you want. You want people to feel better about their day because they met you. You want to be able to, rub off on people in a positive way and influence people to feel good about themselves. No matter what's going on, or no matter who's involved, and that's significance. And so it was Tom Dreesen who personally and professionally taught me the difference between significance and success. And it's all because there's a difference between being spirit-led and ego-driven. And so from that conversation, I did my best to make sure that, our egos are always here. You can't avoid them, but my ego doesn't drive me. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm led by the spirit, which is why I think, significance is more important to me than success. But if you chase significance, success just kind of comes with it.
Well,
Is
and
what
you
I
followed Dad's advice, right? You smiled and you were nice to the white guy. So
also I was smiling. I gotta put that one. I got that. That got to be in the Mount Rushmore of best advice.
You got to put that on your website. And as I was doing some research, something that's really, and I talk about this, and people that I've asked, Patty's obviously said it, and other people, when I've been on set, talk about what a real down to earth, humble guy you are, and something that's really important to you is giving back. So why don't you talk about the hood development that you got that you're working on, and it's interesting that I saw the foundation that you have here. And it's Grandpa John's quote: "If home is where the heart is, then from the heart is where it starts."
Yeah, yeah. Grandpa John always told me that. He told me like no matter what, um, make sure you plant seeds at home first. Um, and when you plant seeds at home and they grow naturally, the rest of the world will notice that, and you grow around where you started. But I remember being a kid in high school, and District 205 would be struggling with funds and finances, and referendums had to be passed in order for us to keep the authenticity and the individuality of our basketball teams and track teams and chess teams, and we didn't want them to be combined because we were all from the same area. We wanted to all have our own identities, but it's hard to do that. It's hard to do that when you don't have the finances and when the district is crying broke, you know. So I was Grandpa John taught me and my friends at the time how to stand for something and how to work hard for something. And also taught us that we might not win this battle, but that's not what it's about. You know what I'm saying? It's about standing up for what's right. It's about giving back to a community that obviously gives to you. And so I just had very early examples. You know what I'm saying? I watched my grandfather spearhead an organization called the CHAMPS program, which was extremely instrumental in making sure minorities were able to get through medical school. And so it would be potential doctors from Nigeria, Haiti, Puerto Rico, and from the west side of Chicago, you know what I mean, that just wanted to be doctors, but didn't know how to study for the MCAT, didn't know if they were going to have the financial aid, didn't know how to communicate with their professors. And so I watched Grandpa John literally walk, like hand in hand, like literally walk people across the street, so to speak, you know what I'm saying, with the opportunity of medicine. And like held their hands the whole time. And to this day, he's still extremely instrumental. Just recently got a big award from medical doctors in the field who owe their careers to Grandpa John. You know what I mean? And so he's just the example that I've always had. And so when I got the opportunity on the show, and then I realized that I had influence and impact. I made sure that Be Powerful and arms like Hood Development would do the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Would be just as instrumental and impactful on the lives of people who just want an opportunity. And so we do our best to give back to the Harvey World community first and foremost, and the villages around it, because that's just where I'm more familiar. That's where I know it's almost low hanging fruit, so to speak, when it comes to giving back that direction. And I allow that to be an example to the rest of the world of how you can give to your community.
That's good stuff. Grandpa John's got his hands and his fingerprints all over good things here in the community. I should maybe interview him. Does he ever come onto the set at all and visit you?
This is what's crazy. One of the last episodes we just shot, I was able to connect. They wanted to shoot in Harvey. Locations called me, Gary, and they were like, we're looking for a property in Harvey or Riverdale that has a weak basement. We need the basement to just not be great, and there's going to be a flood in this basement, and there's going to be a big fight, all these things. And I was like, I don't know a basement that flooded more or was weaker than the basement I moved from when I lived in Harvey before. You know what I'm saying? Like literally the house I lived in when I booked the show becomes set for 3 days.
We're talking Grandpa John's house that we're talking
Wasn't
about?
Grandpa John's house, it was Grandma James's house.
Grandma James's house. Okay.
My dad's mom. So my
Okay.
dad always lived around the corner from me. Well, and my dad always lived around the corner from my mom. So, you know, my dad didn't live in the house with me, but I knew he wasn't far. You know what I'm saying? If I just had to go up the alley around the corner, or, you know, I knew I would find him eventually. And so that's the house that we use. But they parked all the camera trucks and the grip equipment right in front of Grandpa John's house. So believe it or not, Grandpa John for 3 days straight was just on the porch, just looking at the camera trucks. Never really came to set. It wasn't important for him to do that. Naturally, we brought him all the food that we could from Crafty, and people were pulling up on him and having great conversations with him. And whatever he needed, he got. But he just enjoyed just looking at the camera truck parked in front of his house forever and just stayed on the porch for 3 days. It
That's
was
good
great.
stuff. That's
And
good
mind you,
stuff.
so imagine it's the camera truck that's parked in front of John C. Bradley Drive. It's a
Right.
big powerful garbage can right there, and he's right there on the porch. My mom and dad did interviews for NBC, like right there in that little pocket, because my dad has a lawn care service, and they hired him to cut grass on a few locations. And my mom got finder's fees for all the properties she helped them find. And we shot at these locations. So everybody was able to get a piece of the action on this last episode. And I hope we come back. I hope we come back to Harvey, because the hood hadn't been that excited about a production since 1979 when we shot the Blues Brothers.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Went through the mall. That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then I remember, well, we far southeast side, right underneath the Skyway. I shot the episode with you and Patty when you caught that pedophile when the underwear was in the drawer, and you guys were running up into the alley. And I remember the director yelling at me because I ran right into you. This is one of my first times being on set, so I was like, "Oh, okay, great." And I'm just, when you hear action, walk toward the police officers, then they're going to tell you, and you I don't know if you remember this. You probably don't. It's you're coming up. You get out of the Charger. You're walking up to the fence, and I am standing literally right behind you while you got the gun over the fence. And all of a sudden, we hear cut, cut, and then the second AD comes out and goes, "You're really not supposed to be standing next to the officer during the raid." I'm like, "My bad." So I got to send you that picture of me when you were doing that. So somebody snapped a photo, so it was pretty cool. But
Oh man, I can't wait to see it. Send me
it
that picture.
it was hilarious because then because Patty's telling me, "Sir, go back," and I had to run back into the alley and hide and everything. That was my first big. That's when I had about 3, 4 more chins. So it was a hot August, like 99 degrees. It was a fall episode. We were shooting in a
So you
big
had
three
layers
flat.
on,
You remember that one in the Skyway? It was hotter than hell, man. I'm just like, wow, long,
man.
long day. All right, LaRoyce Hawkins, we're going to take a break real quick and come back and play a feature called In a Word. LaRoyce Hawkins, my guest. He plays Kevin Atwater on Chicago PD.
Brought to you by Team Keys and your financial services division manager, Whitley Brooks Edmondson, and Slugmaster, turning batters into hitters. Log on to slugmaster.com for a dealer near you.
Welcome back. LaRoyce Hawkins, my guest. He plays Kevin Atwater, Officer Kevin Atwater on Chicago PD. It's the 12th season premiere Wednesday night coming up, 9 p.m. NBC. 12 years already for this show. LaRoyce, a couple more questions before we let you go. Then we do a feature called In a Word. Some interesting questions that I thought about. It was like, if you can trade places with anyone, who would it be in life?
Trade places with anybody in your life. That's a good one. It would I would I'm having a tough time deciding whether I want to go like younger or older. you know, like because it's babies and old people. I feel like they just got it. They got it good. Like after a while, there's nothing left to worry about. It's like you're not old enough to worry about anything, and then you're too old to worry about anything.
Right.
Um,
You're
I
too young.
mean,
You're too young to know any better, and you're old enough to know it
right,
all. Right. And there you go.
right,
Something
right,
like
right,
that.
right,
Yeah.
right. Um,
You could do old or young. So who would you trade places with? Old, young LaRoyce, and then old LaRoyce.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, if I could trade places, if I could trade places with Roman John, to be honest with you, I would.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think my son has he's got it made. He's got it made. You know what I mean? He's got the cool dad. He's got the beautiful mom. He gets to go to school and just be himself and just, you know what I mean, and just kick it and groove. I watch him thoroughly enjoy life and have fun with it. I listen to the questions he asks and I can tell he's interested. You know what I'm saying? Not just trying to be interesting, like we talked about. And so if I could, yeah, 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 I would trade that. And then if I had to go old, be honest with you, I would go grab a job.
Yeah, I was just gonna think it. Once you said Roman, I was like, Grandpa John's got to be, got to be the
Yeah,
man who's coming old.
yeah, I would go grab a John. Grab a John's looking at 90. Um, and he's almost there. He might be 85 or 86, but he's looking at 90. You know what I mean? And when I talk to him,
Oh
when I
boy.
talk to him, he's his energy is always high. And I know as an old timer, you can slow down in your days. They're not as fluid as they used to be. But we still speak in basketball terminologies. So when I ask him how he's doing, he usually gives me this answer that feels like, coach still got me in the game. I'm still hitting my free throws and I'm getting my rebounds. So as long as I'm doing that, I'll be in the game. You know what I'm saying? And so I appreciate that perspective. And yeah, those would be my two if I had to.
Boy, RJ's gonna love this. You talking about him, so hopefully he watches and get some subscribers for me. RJ, hook me up, okay, man? YouTube Z
For
Force
sure.
Media. There we go. Yeah.
But
All
the
right.
Roman John is named after Grappa John.
I
That's
figure, I figured as
Roman
much.
John.
I figured as
Mhm.
much. Yeah, yeah. It's all falling into place, LaRoyce. It's right there. So,
Yes, sir.
all right, a guilty pleasure for LaRoyce Hawkins.
Mm. A guilty pleasure. I got a few. I gotta have a few. I'm just trying to remember them because every time I lock in on a guilty pleasure, I tell myself this is the guilty pleasure line. But now that you ask, I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time recalling guilty pleasure.
See, I flustered Patty toward the end of the interview. He couldn't think too well, but he said that you'd be able to handle it. But I got to come with some of the tough questions for you.
Nah, nah, nah. That's a good one. That's a
Yeah.
good one. I think. Hmm, for a long time, I considered country music to be a guilty pleasure of mine because you wouldn't expect that from me.
Uh,
But I'm a big Rascal Flatts fan, and
Oh my God! I
it's
see.
really about
My producer doesn't have her headphones on. She would absolutely love you. So he's a Rascal Flats fan. His guilty pleasure is country music. So she turned me on to that country music. I'm a rock country guy. I like Eric Church. I don't know if you've heard him. He's great, and Cody Marks as well. Tune into him. Corey Marks, whatever. Corey Marks,
yeah,
Cody
for
Marks.
Mark.
Yeah,
Um,
Rascal Flats, huh? You do not look like a Rascal Flats guy, buddy. I can't
Trust
see
me,
you
man.
I cannot see you in a cowboy hat and boots, bro.
First of all, I got the best cowboy hat. I got the best cowboy hat I know.
All right. After this interview, you're gonna have to go find and put it on for her so she can see it.
Yeah,
He's got
yeah,
the
I got
best
the
cowboy hat. So
I got the best cowboy hat I know, and I know the whole Me and My Gang album. I know every word backwards and forwards.
really, wow. Okay. All right. All right.
Yes,
So
sir.
what? So you go from Najee to Rascal Flats. Boy, that's one extreme to the other. How about that? So.
Trust me.
All right. This last question for the season coming up, and then we go to In a Word. What can the PD fans expect from Atwater and Intelligence in season 12?
And they can truly just expect the best season they've ever seen, to be honest with you. Like we're about 6 episodes deep. We're going into 7 next week. Every episode, in my humble opinion, has been my favorite. It's hard to say. You can expect um, us all to be extremely locked in. You can expect us to have some fun. It's going to start off pretty fast paced, and then we're going to settle down into something that's pretty unique and interesting. You know, we got new cast members coming in and out, which is going to be incredible. Um, so yeah, just I would just expect the best. Please expect the best. 9:25. We going
Everybody's going to be waiting. It's coming up on Wednesday, 9 o'clock NBC Chicago
Dang, it
time.
is coming up already.
It's next week. Yeah, how about that? Ooh, look
Hey,
out!
wait.
All right, LaRoyce, final segment here. We do a segment called In a Word. I'm going to give you some phrases, some places, things. If you can answer it in a word, fine. If not, expand as much as you can. All right, bud?
Cover that.
All right. LaRoyce Hawkins behind the mic. In a word, your childhood growing up in Harvey.
Unique.
Not bad. Not bad. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In a word, LaRoyce, acting in your hometown.
Surreal.
Oh, he's 2 for 2. This is a softball question, but you know I had to throw it in there because of RJ. In a word, LaRoyce, fatherhood.
Patience.
I don't believe it. Yep.
Patience.
In a word, LaRoyce Hawkins, your Chicago PD family.
Rare.
Damn, this man's on fire. He might the award for all one words here. Here we go. Final question. In a word for LaRoyce Hawkins, I'm behind the mic. LaRoyce, in a word, your career. Well, if I had the Jeopardy music and we were live, I'd be playing it right now. But that's
I know,
okay.
right?
Take your time. Take your time.
No. Because I want to give you a good one.
Okay. 4 for 4 so far in a word.
Yeah. Because I got a lot of words, but I'm trying to think of the word that makes all the words. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Yep.
Um.
Come on, you're the man of the spoken word here. So here we go.
Mm-hmm. Legendary.
Ooh.
And I say
Leg-
that humbly.
Legendary. Yeah. Well, you know what? Sometimes you can, so you got to toot your own horn sometimes. You've earned it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you look where you started, your humble beginnings, but you've had a great family around you. You got your opportunity. You took it. I mean, for me, I was like, when I first, this whole BG stuff fell into my lap because the tornado destroyed our house in Naperville, Father's Day back in 2021. And all of a sudden I'm going to set with, Eamon from Chicago Fire doing that battalion chief scene. So, and then working with
Wow.
you and so I'm going to throw one more question there since you're a big stand-up comedian guy. Who's your major comedian influence?
Um. When right now is Dave Chappelle.
Right. Okay.
When I started the comedians, I modeled my approach after was Steve Harvey and Jamie Foxx.
Okay. All right. What'd you think about Richard Pryor or Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock?
Oh, love them. They kind of go without saying. You
Right.
know what I mean?
George Carlin.
George Carlin, amazing. But
Okay.
you know who put me on George Carlin was actually Grapper John. Grapper John put me on George Carlin and Richard Pryor.
Dad was a big George Carlin fan and Rodney Dangerfield fan. In fact, I got the vinyl albums, a place for my stuff, and also Rappin' Rodney.
Yeah.
So I still have those vinyl albums. Yeah.
Red Fox is big too.
Yeah.
I'm
Red
from Red
Fox.
Fox up there.
I don't know if I should mention this. If this is, Bill Cosby.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Cosby goes without saying as well.
Right.
Cosby, Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, and Red Fox were like my OG Mount Rushmore.
Mm-hmm.
So George Carlin on there for a fact, as like an honorable mention. And then like Steve Harvey was such a big influence that I couldn't, all my early gigs I performed in my prom suit because I wanted to be that clean.
I thought you would have, Steve Harvey's fine. I thought you would have leaned towards Bernie Mac.
No, but Bernie Mac, we're just different cats. You know what I'm saying? Steve Harvey reminds me a lot of my dad.
Okay.
A little bit, you know what I'm saying? And so I just connected with him more. Bernie Mac, top 5, dead or alive, but he's so unique himself, you know what I'm saying? I'm not built like Bernie Mac, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I couldn't, as much as I admired Bernie Mac's material, I knew it wasn't something that I could emulate.
Cedric the Entertainer, how about him? Up there too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Big Cedric the Entertainer fan.
Yeah.
Jamie Foxx was so good at taking songs and rephrasing them. And since I was, I was a singer also, I would do the same thing with a lot of my jokes. I would reimagine songs as something else and just make them funny. And so that's why Steve Harvey and Jamie Foxx were like, when it came down for me actually doing it, those were the comedians I knew. I was like, I can borrow those textures and make them work for myself.
Cat Williams, a little bit too eccentric for you?
I love Cat Williams, first and foremost. And I wouldn't call him too eccentric. I think Cat Williams teaches you how to be fearless. You know what I'm saying? He obviously has like a very fearless opinion and he's eccentric, like you said. But yeah, I'm not built like that. You know what I mean? I would be stretching myself if I wanted to do that. Like,
you feel that he's authentic?
Like
is that an act or is he authentic? Is it Cat Williams real or is that just part of his act?
I think he's real.
Yeah.
I think he's real. I think he's real, and I know that because, being on the scene in LA, I've ran into Cat Williams on the comedy scene, and his energy is very real. But right now, I'm in such a storytelling pocket that it's hard not to see myself, and like me and Dave Chappelle just got very similar styles in the way that we like to take our time with a story, hit you with a punchline that you didn't expect. Just very crafty. You know what I'm saying? He's a crafty storyteller, which I like to study. When he was in Chicago, I snuck into all 3 shows that he did at the United Center. Had to see.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And then I got nervous when I saw him at the Soho House. I walked out. I wasn't ready.
Well, he's going to know you, especially if you keep growing. I mean, 12 years on PD, your foundation is giving back and doing well. You're a hell of a guy, LaRoyce. I appreciate the time. Continued success. Looking forward to season 12 and keep it going, my man. And I look forward to maybe rushing a house with you and Patty one of these days on a scene if I get booked. So I look forward to seeing you down the line, and I'll have you on again. And just the best to you and good luck to you in the rest of your career, my man.
I appreciate you. I definitely love to be back, and can't wait to see you on that battlefield. And thanks, just thanks, not just for the way you took care of me, but the way you took care of Patty. He came back gushing about you, man, and so I had to make sure I locked in with you, and I feel the same way.
I appreciate that. Thanks very much. I'm just trying to, try a new thing here. Like we talked off camera, radio is my thing, but this is something that's obviously big now, doing the podcast. And like I said, I got a face for radio, doing TV. So we'll see how this goes. And hopefully I look forward to maybe having Marina on and Jason on and working down the line. And like I said, stay in touch. And also, I owe you a concert. So I think it's January, February. We'll be getting together. Najee's coming back at the City Winery in Chicago.
Ooh.
So we're definitely going to hook up back then. Okay.
Copy that. I can't wait, man. Appreciate you for everything.
LaRoyce, be safe, man. Take care. All right.
Yes, sir.
LaRoyce Hawkins, my guest tonight on Behind the Mic. He plays Officer Kevin Atwater on Chicago PD. The season premiere, September 25th, 9 o'clock NBC Chicago time. Make sure you tune in. We're going to come back with a final thought right after this.
Brought to you by Team Keys and your financial services division manager, Whitley Brooks Edmondson, and Slugmaster, turning batters into hitters. Log on to slugmaster.com for a dealer near you.
Welcome back. Final thought. Big, huge thank you to LaRoyce Hawkins for coming on. Looking forward to seeing the products they're putting on for season 12. Season 12 already for Chicago PD. The time is flying. So I can remember when we first saw LaRoyce Hawkins as Kevin Atwater. And, funny story, obviously, if you look at Ruzek, PJ Pfluger, and LaRoyce Hawkins, they had a little chunk to them as well. But certainly as the years went on, they got the workout program, and now they're just they're fit, they're huge, they're big, they're jacked, like a Chicago Competent Intelligent Unit should be. So September 25th, 9 p.m. Chicago time, season 12 premiere of Chicago PD. This past week, got to see Najee in concert as he came in to work Brian Culbertson's Jazz Getaway. It was at the Fairmont Hotel. And let me tell you something, the acoustics in a ballroom, I thought they'd be shitty, but they were great. Najee put on a great show. He had to get out real quick. We got to see him in the sound check. Got to hang with him for a little bit, watched a great show. Like I said, he's coming back to headline a show at the City Winery, I believe, in January, February. I'm definitely going to be promoting that, and we're going to go seeing him hang out backstage and get some pictures. So anytime you get to see if Najee comes into town, highly recommend it. This guy blows in a good way. He's one of the top saxophonist in the country. And speaking of that, some of the upcoming guests we have coming up next week, as we're going to be loading up some tapings here as the fall season is starting. Can you believe it? The summer is over already. This summer has flown by tremendously. But I've got Gary Bias, the saxophonist for Earth, Wind, and Fire, coming on. Also Chris Tardio, who was in The Sopranos and also was on Power Book Force all 3 seasons, which be kicking off, I'm assuming, probably toward the end of fall, maybe wintertime for the final season on Stars as well. Looking forward to that. Please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. Leave a comment below if you want to hear anybody. If you have any ideas of show guests, we certainly want to do it. You want to follow me on Instagram, it's the one behind the mic. And we're just going to keep on rolling here. We hope you enjoy the shows. Thanks so much for getting us over 100 subscribers. We appreciate it. Keep on listening. Keep on hitting that subscribe and like button, and we'll keep bringing you great shows. So for all of us here at Behind the Mic, my name's Gary Zahara. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Behind the Mic has been brought to you by Team Keys and your financial services division manager, Whitley Brooks Edmondson, specializing in affordable insurance and investments. Team Keys, keep elevating yourself. Call 248-403-0919 to book your appointment. And Slugmaster, turning batters into hitters. Log on to slugmaster.com for a dealer near you. Behind the Mic is a Did He Go production, produced by Z-Force Media. Stage manager is Heather Marie. The executive producer of Behind the Mic is Eric Ferguson.